There are two avenues of combat in this war of mine, melee and ranged. Today's character will show off the second. Welcome back to a Survivor's Guide to this war of mine. Today we will be going over the Police Officer custom character. So their trait is Familiar with Guns, which in essence just means that they can use them better than any other character. This gives them the ability to hit from further away, deal more damage with them, and recover from shooting quicker than all the other characters. Given how difficult some areas could be even with a gun, this character is a valuable addition to any team. Besides their trait, they also get the standard inventory size of 12 and get relatively decent combat stats for melee combat and guarding. However, I would always have a gun for them if possible while out scavenging. Outside of that, they are pretty average on the speed front, and their personality seems to be pretty standard, being similar to Anton, Arica or Marin. It's also worth noting though that attacking soldiers can make them sad, similar to Roman. Finally, they are not able to play the guitar well. Now that we have gone through the abilities, it's time to move on to the lore. Here is the police officer's opening bio. Just before the war reached Pogoren, our unit had received news of planned evacuation of most of the uniformed services from the city. I stayed, because I failed to convince my beloved to leave, and I couldn't leave them here alone. We didn't know how dire the situation would become. One day, when I was coming home from a walk with my dog, I heard the first alarm sirens. I ran as fast as I could, but it was already too late. My flat was in flames. I couldn't find my beloved or their body. So what happened to their partner? Did they make it? Well, the endings to their story depend on how your games go. If your character dies during the war, sadly, the police officer did not live to see the end of the fighting. Collateral damage, as the military would put it. If your police officer kills themselves, the police officer could not take it anymore and chose to take their life, rather than continue like this. If they decide to leave the shelter, one night they left the shelter and did not come back. Their motivation remains unknown. Now, if they make it to the end of the war, you have three possible endings. If they get to the end of the war with poor karma, the police officer survived, and after a long search, managed to find their beloved, who was scarred by the fire and became gloomy and withdrawn. They stayed with them, although things were never the same again. If your police officer gets to the end of the war, but with sadness, the things the police officer witnessed and did during the war made them lose conviction. They did not return to work as a police officer, nor did they think themselves worthy of their beloved. They never saw each other again. And finally, if the police officer makes it to the end of the war in good spirits and having not committed any atrocities, the police officer survived the war and found their beloved in one of the temporary refugee camps. They managed to put their war experience behind them and remained a couple until this day. So there we have it, the police officer. That leaves us with only 2 custom characters, and then the DLC characters will begin. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, please do like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Ta-ra.